Hey everyone, this video is going to be about both my path into becoming a furry and my experience attending Anthrocon in full for the first time, which the one thing leads into the other there, so the two things are more related than they sound. So, I got my first suit from Blue Harbor Mascots in June of 2015, and I started attending conventions and furry events regularly with Midwest Fur Fest in December 2014. So I went full trash about going on 3 years now, but I'd been lurking around long before that. I went to a couple East Coast conventions in the early 2010s, and I had first stumbled upon online furry content just shortly before that. I've lived in Pittsburgh my entire life, so my first interaction with furries at all was Anthrocon 2008, experiencing the spectacle as an outsider at the time. I saw it and was fascinated and liked being around it and taking it all in, but hadn't yet considered becoming involved with it in any way. Nearly a year later, I stumbled upon my first furry website completely by accident. I think I found a link to a character reference or something, which took me to the website yifstar.com. If you can't tell from the name, Yifstar wasn't exactly the best the internet has to offer. It wasn't exclusively adult content, but there was a lot of it to sift through if you were only interested in the more cartoonish or beautiful elements, or the interesting characters, or connecting with others who had a similar interest in those things. Scrolling through Yifstar, which is now known as So Furry, didn't immediately suck me into a portal of furry degeneracy overnight or anything, but it had planted the seed into me for sure. I found myself going back for more every week, and then every few days, and then before long at all, it was a part of my daily routine. I think the part that appealed to me the most was the idea that you could create this character from which to represent yourself and live vicariously through it in this subculture that, while intangible, was still understood and appreciated by everyone involved in it. I had always been a kid with an incredibly active imagination, and even as an adult, I'm 27 now, and some of the things I daydream about when I'm trying to fall asleep are more appropriate for a 10-year-old. This online community I discovered seemed to be on the same page with that kind of imagination, and I was fast falling in love with it. In October of 2009 is when I found furaffinity.net, and at that point I was in. Fur Affinity was a much better place for finding new friends, which was an important part of it all for me than Yifstar was. Not to mention it also had both art and fursuit photography, which was another interest that was growing on me by the day. I made an account, designed my first character, which I'll put up on the screen here in a second, and I was loving every second of it. So, here was the original Beiny. I know, it's a cringe fest, but I was new. Beiny didn't become a Shep until several years later, and if you've ever seen any of the Beiny is a fox jokes on Twitter or elsewhere, that's what they're referring to. But anyways, there's not much more to add about my experience with Fur Affinity. I was making friends, I was getting art of my character, I was enjoying other people's art and fursuit photos, I was having fun, and it was safe to say that I had become a part of the fandom by that point. However, it was something I kept very personal and secret from my friends and family. My furry life and normal life were vastly different, and I was adamant about keeping them apart. I didn't want the secret to get out, and that was priority number one, and it was something that I worried a lot about. Now, before I go any further in justifying that, I want to preface it by saying I realize it's mostly all in my head. Realistically, I know that no one really cares what quirky hobbies anyone else has, and if they do care, then the right attitude is to say to heck with them. And also, the fact that I still get really uncomfortable with the idea is more of a legacy instinct than anything. For example, if I packed up and moved to a new city or something like that, I wouldn't make any kind of effort to hide it or care who knew. But even with all that being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to keep your professional and family lives separate from your furry life. Even if the reason is just to avoid awkwardness and having to answer a bunch of questions about it, that's a sufficient reason in my opinion. My problem wasn't the idea that I wanted to have that barrier. My problem was the lengths I would go to in order to keep it up, and the things I was missing out on as a result. I didn't do local meets, I was afraid to do public suiting, so on and so forth. And in the past year or two, I became self-aware of the fact that I was being a little ridiculous and decided to ease up on it a bit. Going to local meets was less of a threat to my wall because they normally take place in suburbs where it would be unusual to run into any normies I knew, so I started with that. It only took one night to realize how much fun I was sacrificing in order to keep this up, and then I was a regular attendee. Anthrocon, on the other hand, was still out of the question for me. I don't want to say where I work, but it's in very, very close proximity to the convention center, and as a result, I know darn near everyone who works in that area. Not only my several dozen co-workers who would be right there all weekend, but a bunch of guys who work at the main hotel, the restaurants, the bars, and several more who work right in the convention center, including none other than my dear old dad. Running into them wasn't a possibility, but rather an inevitability. For many years, going to AC was something that I wouldn't even have considered. I didn't feel like I was missing much because even if I had stopped caring about who knew about my hobby, it would still be impossible to immerse myself in this escape from normal life experience when I'm practically at work the whole time. But it didn't make it any easier to avoid the feeling that I was missing out on all the fun. This leads us to Anthrocon 2016 when I made one of the stupidest decisions of my life. A lot of times when friends or loved ones are doing something where I'm not going to be able to join, I'll schedule myself a bunch of overtime at work. This will allow me to focus on something other than the feeling of missing out, will give me a chance to get ahead on projects, and let me make a little more money all at once. This is what I did for the whole weekend of AC 2016. The whole weekend, 16 hours a day, watching everyone have fun without me at the convention. Friends in town who I hadn't seen in forever and may not see again for God knows how long, and I was going to miss them because I was being a chicken. It didn't distract from the feeling of being left out, it amplified it to an astronomical degree. It was one of the worst weekends of my life, and while everyone else wanted to prolong every second of it, I couldn't wait for it to be over. As the following months went on, friends would visit town to hang out here and there, and inevitably we would drive past somewhere in which the convention center was in view, and they'd say, "There's AC," and you could hear it in their voice, the blissful memories conjured up just by seeing the building. While for me, it was the complete opposite. Looking at the building or the hotel for more than a few seconds would remind me how I felt that weekend, and it wasn't good. I knew I was going to have to do something different, I just didn't know what. I think it was around January one night at work where I looked over at the convention center and completely on a whim, out of nowhere, I decided I was going. Sure, it would be really uncomfortable walking around there out of suit, but I figured to hell with it, I'll stay in suit the whole time if I have to. And that might feel a little awkward too, but it would beat feeling the way I did the year before. Hotel booking opened up the following month, I got my room at the courtyard, took the weekend off work, and I was ready to go. Fast forward to Anthrocon 2017.
We're getting a little thirsty here. I think it might be time for an Andrew WK meme.
There's not much to talk about when it comes to walking around the con space out of suit. I felt very exposed and really just wanted to go back and get my suit. Pretty much what I expected. Now, I actually had fursuited at Anthrocon 2015 for 15 minutes or so when I borrowed a friend's badge. I didn't last in it too long because I was a new suitor at the time and had very little endurance, plus it was late at night and not many people were out and about. So it wasn't a real sample of what to expect when it came to going out and suiting throughout the con. I kind of figured that I would have a difficult time getting into character fursuiting there, being where I'm at and knowing I have familiar eyes on me, but that if I just kept it in the back of my mind that they can't see inside the suit, I would eventually get used to it and brush that feeling off. And it was weird, but only for about 3 minutes, literally. I think in the period of time it took to walk from my hotel to the convention center, I had stopped caring who was watching. It was time to dog out, and I wasn't going to waste a second. I bounced around the convention center, wagging and booping and hugging and smooching everyone I knew. And new friends too. I was having so much fun. The only real downside was the heat and humidity. It made it hard to stay in suit for very long at all, but I was willing to tough it out. As a result, though, mostly everyone's fursuit outings were shorter than normal, and their periods of time resting in between were longer because the suits were getting soaked in sweat and needed more time to dry. This meant less fursuiters out at once, but there were still more than enough to greet and run around and be silly with. Some of the most unexpected fun was meeting people on the sidewalk and taking pictures with them. Sure, there were some people who might sneer or gawk, but they were the minority. Mostly everyone was ecstatic to run up and give you a hug, take a selfie with you, or whatever else. There was one woman on a video call with her husband, so she put me on the phone with him and had me give him a hard time for not coming down and hanging out with us. They both got a kick out of that, so did her kids. And the kids, ask any fursuiter what their favorite part of it all is, and 9 times out of 10 they're going to tell you that it's seeing kids smile and laugh when they see you out in public. And they get so excited when you agree to give them a hug or a picture. It really is a wonderful feeling to make someone's day like that, and to know that you're going to be a part of one of their fond childhood memories. The best part of the con for me was the fursuit parade on Saturday afternoon. My friends and I did a theme to celebrate the Pittsburgh Penguins Stanley Cup victory, which the local news seemed to take a liking to. But what a crowd there was for that parade. Unlike many conventions where the parade route goes through just the con space and then maybe right out front of the con space, Anthrocon's goes through closed city streets, in which crowds of locals come out to see it all. And it's mostly for families. The kids, unsurprisingly, all like to get high fives from the cute animal people as they walk by, and we love giving them. Plenty of adults show up too, though, just to take in the spectacle. They also got pretty excited about the Penguins team we had going near the front of the line. It's not hard to please us Yinzers, we like our hockey. Of course, I could see plenty of people I knew while doing this fursuiting. I did the whole con, really. It didn't faze me in the least. In fact, I thought it was kind of funny to think to myself, they're looking right at me, and they haven't got the slightest clue that they know me. There was even one point Sunday night where I was riding around on the back of Blitz's convertible in suit, and we're sitting at a red light, and I look over on the sidewalk, and I see a coworker staring right at me. And if you told me beforehand that this was going to happen, I probably would have thought, oh, that's really weird and uncomfortable. But by the time it happened, I thought it was hilarious. I hammed up the dog character even more as we went by, and he was none the wiser that it was one of the guys who trained him how to do his job. It left me wondering, why did I wait so long to do this? I only had one sketchy situation involving keeping my identity hidden, and it took place in the Headless Lounge of all places. The Headless Lounge, my safe space with bully-proof windows and troll-safe doors. One of the women I know who works at the convention center was in there sweeping up. I spotted her before she spotted me, so I just popped my head back on and the crisis was averted. But even if she had seen me, oh well, it's not the end of the world. I guess in terms of some things I can take away from the con, I think I should probably learn how to dance. I've gone back and forth on it for a while because I really don't like dancing. I think it's sort of goofy and never really have had any desire to do it. And every time I start to talk myself into learning, I think, no, I'm not going to do it just because everybody else is doing it. Then again, everyone else has a good reason for doing it because it's an activity that lends itself well to something like fursuiting, where you're putting so much emphasis on your movements and mannerisms anyways. So I've got the one move now, the dancing baby meme, but hopefully I'll have a few more in my repertoire by MFF. My biggest regret from the con is that I dabbed once, so feel free to go ahead and dislike the video. It's not even okay to dab ironically, but someone put a camera in my face and I needed to do a pose on a whim, so I just did the most basic thing I could think of. And dabbing is the most basic thing I can think of. Watch. All the cute pictures I had taken of me around the con will be nowhere to be found, and this will be the one that shows up on my Twitter feed now. Oh well. And then there's the obvious question, would I go again? Which I'm not sure, but that's actually for a different reason. The reason I say that is because I only have a limited amount of paid time off from work, and I'm really stingy with it. Like, I like to get out of town and see a con I haven't seen before and have a real proper vacation. And as much fun as I had at Anthrocon, it still didn't feel like a proper vacation because it was 15 minutes away from my house and 1 minute from the place I work. So what I'm thinking I'd like to do is go to the con in a limited capacity, like pay someone to let me use their hotel room to get in and out of suit so I can still go dog out around the con, but then not have to take any time off work or stay at the hotel overnight. I don't know. I've got a whole year to figure it out, but I'm thinking something like that. I'm not going to worry about it now, though. But rest assured, if you're planning on being at AC 2018, you'll see a big green shop running around there too. It's sort of funny to think about how 18 months ago there was nothing that could get me to go to the con, and then now, present time, there's nothing that's going to keep me from it. Well, I think that basically takes us to the end of the video, but there was a Twitter video I posted the other day, and I think it's relevant to what we're talking about here, so I'm going to attach it here at the end and then just let it roll out on that. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. And please let me know in the comments, did you go to Anthrocon? Did you have fun? Are you as weird as I am about keeping a lid on the furry trash? I'm curious to know. Thanks again, everyone. I'll see you soon.
You know, I was reflecting on some things lately, and I couldn't help but think about how often the things you almost didn't do can change your life. I know it's true for me, and I think it's true for most people, where if you look back at almost any great accomplishment or fond memory or life-changing event, you can usually find some totally innocuous thing that nearly held you up. Maybe it was an awesome trip that you almost didn't go on because you thought the drive was too long. Or maybe it was a special person who you almost didn't meet because you felt awkward introducing yourself. Maybe it was a purchase like your first car or house that you almost didn't do because the process was intimidating. I can't help but notice that every great thing that I've experienced has come as a result of saying, I'm just going to do it. Let the chips fall where they may. And it's something that I'm going to remember going forward now, and I hope you all will too. Not taking chances only results in a boring life. And maybe you like boring. I like boring too most of the time. But there's a song I really like that says, most days in life don't stand out, but life's about those days that will. And I think you make those ones that will stand out by doing the things that you almost didn't do.